TIFU by accidentally getting my boss's ex-wife fired, and now I'm stuck in a weird, awkward situation. Here's how it all went down. So, a little backstory, I work as a marketing coordinator at a mid-sized firm. It's a small company, and everyone knows everyone, which is both a blessing and a curse. I've been with the company for about 2 years now, and I've gotten pretty comfortable with my coworkers. Everyone is super chill, and it's easy to get along with them. Most of my interactions at work are with my team, but there's one person I interact with a bit more than I'd like to, my boss's ex-wife. Her name is Kelly. She's about 40, and she works in HR at the company. I had no idea that she was my boss's ex-wife when I first met her. I thought she was just another HR person. She's really nice, but after some time, I started picking up on some strange vibes. She would always act a little off around our boss, Greg. I figured they didn't get along very well, but that wasn't my business. She seemed to have a decent enough relationship with the rest of us, so I didn't think much of it. One day, I overheard some office gossip while I was grabbing coffee. A couple of people were talking about how Kelly and Greg had been married for years but recently got divorced. The details were vague, but it was clear that it was a pretty messy split. Apparently, Kelly had found out that Greg was seeing someone else, and it all went downhill from there. Fast forward to last week. It was a Tuesday morning when I was working on a project and needed to get approval from Greg. He's always been kind of a hands-off boss, which I appreciate, but this one thing was super important. So, I emailed him the document, and he asked me to meet him in his office to discuss it. I walked in and found him looking a bit off. I didn't know what it was at first, but he seemed distracted, and his usually neat desk was a mess. There were papers everywhere. I assumed it was just a busy day, so I didn't think much of it. As I sat down, Greg started talking about the document, but I could tell he was sidetracked. He eventually blurted out, "I just don't know what to do anymore with Kelly. I've tried being civil, but she's being so difficult." He wasn't talking about work either, he was talking about their personal issues. He had no idea that I had already overheard the office gossip, but at the time, I didn't really think it was any of my business. I nodded sympathetically and tried to steer the conversation back to work. But then, he mentioned something that really stuck with me. "She's always around the office now. I don't know if she's trying to get under my skin or what, but it's like she's everywhere." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "I just want things to be normal, but she's constantly pushing my buttons." Now, looking back, I should have just nodded, smiled, and kept my mouth shut, but me being me, I was trying to make him feel better and just said, "Maybe she's just trying to get used to the new situation. You know, maybe she doesn't know how to handle all the changes. She probably feels like she's losing control." Greg gave me a look like I was speaking some kind of profound truth, which I didn't really understand at the time. He thanked me, and I left the meeting feeling like I had offered some semblance of support. What I didn't know was that my comment was going to spiral into something absolutely ridiculous. That evening, I had a quick drink after work with a couple of colleagues. We were chatting about the usual work stuff, and Kelly showed up. She had a couple of drinks with us, and we talked about everything under the sun, work, the weather, our weekend plans. It was lighthearted. At some point, she mentioned how things had been tough since the divorce, and I made a comment that wasn't well thought out. I said, "Yeah, I can imagine. You must feel like you're losing control of everything, right?" She stopped, her eyes narrowing. "What do you mean by that?" she asked, a little too sharply. I froze, realizing what I had just said. My heart sank, and I tried to backpedal. No, I just meant that things must feel all over the place right now. You know, the divorce, the office, Greg, everything. It can feel like things are slipping away from you." Kelly gave me a tight smile, clearly not amused. She stood up and excused herself, saying she needed to get home. I wasn't sure if I had made her mad or if she just wasn't in the mood to talk. Either way, the conversation ended awkwardly, and I was left wondering if I had said something wrong. The next day, the entire office felt off. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but everyone was on edge. It wasn't until around lunchtime that I found out what had happened. Apparently, Kelly had gone to HR and filed a complaint about me. She said that I had been insensitive and manipulative in the way I spoke to her the night before. At first, I was confused. What did I even say that was so bad? It wasn't until I heard the details that I realized what had gone down. Kelly had apparently gone to HR, crying about how I had triggered her emotional state and made her feel like she was losing control of her life. She had even said that my words about losing control hit too close to home, considering her divorce and how Greg had left her. HR was forced to take action. Here's the kicker: Greg, my boss, found out about it. Not only was Kelly's complaint about me filed, but now Greg was involved in the situation too. He ended up finding out about my conversation with her, and suddenly, I was in the middle of this mess that was far beyond what I had intended. HR pulled me in for a meeting and gave me a talk about being more sensitive with my coworkers, especially in situations as personal as divorce. They didn't officially reprimand me, but they made it clear that I needed to be more aware of my words moving forward. I tried to explain that I didn't mean anything by it, but the damage had already been done. A few days later, Kelly was mysteriously let go from her position in HR. No one really knew the details, but we all suspected it had something to do with the complaints she'd filed. There was a lot of gossip circulating around the office about it, but no one wanted to say anything for fear of getting caught up in the drama. As for me, I feel like I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place. I've got to work with Greg, who now knows that I got involved in his personal life in the worst possible way, and I feel horrible about what happened with Kelly. She lost her job because of me trying to be helpful, and I can't help but feel like I made everything worse. I'm trying to figure out how to fix things, but right now, I'm just laying low and hoping the office tension dies down. I definitely learned my lesson about staying out of personal matters, but at this point, it might be too late. TLDR, tried to comfort my boss about his ex-wife, made a comment about her losing control, which she took as manipulative, got her to file a complaint about me, and then she got fired. Now I'm stuck in a weird office situation and feel terrible. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. TIFU by thinking I could fix my friend's car and ended up costing them thousands in repairs. So, here's the thing. I'm not a mechanic, not by any means, but I like to think I'm handy. I can change a flat tire, replace brake pads, and do the basic stuff that makes me feel like I'm a part-time car doctor. For context, I've watched a ton of YouTube videos, read some DIY forums, and have an older car that I've tinkered with here and there to keep it running. So when my friend, let's call him Mike, came to me with a problem, I figured, hey, this is my time to shine. Mike's car had been acting up for a few weeks. It was a 2012 Honda Civic, nothing too fancy, but it was a reliable ride when it wasn't throwing fits. He told me that the engine had been stalling occasionally, especially when coming to a stop. He had already taken it to a shop, and they told him it could be a fuel pump issue, but they quoted him $1,500 for the replacement. Mike was a little hesitant about that, and honestly, I wasn't thrilled with the idea of him spending that kind of money either, especially when I was pretty sure I could figure it out myself. Mike asked me if I could take a look at it, and with all my confidence in DIY know-how, I said, sure, no problem. I'll handle it. After all, how hard could it be to change a fuel pump? I'd watched at least 5 videos on the topic and felt like I could do this with my eyes closed. Boy, was I wrong. So, I spent the next couple of days doing research. I watched more videos. I read blogs, and I even asked a couple of people who I thought knew more about cars than I did. Everything pointed to the fuel pump, so I felt pretty solid in my diagnosis. The problem was that I hadn't actually done this kind of repair before, but I figured I could just wing it. On the day of the repair, I went over to Mike's place with all the tools I thought I needed: wrenches, screwdrivers, pliers, and the all-important replacement fuel pump I had ordered off eBay for $120. It was a generic part, but I had no reason to believe it wouldn't work. I mean, the internet said it would fit, right? Mike had to leave for work, so I had the whole day to work on his car. I got to his driveway, popped the hood, and immediately started making a mess of things. I removed the seat and rear panel to access the fuel tank area, because apparently that's where the fuel pump lives. It took a lot of muscle and swearing to get everything unlatched, and I felt like I was making progress, even though it was taking longer than expected. I might have accidentally disconnected a few wires that weren't related to the fuel pump, whoops, but I figured I'd just reconnect them when I was done. I was sure everything would be fine. When it came time to disconnect the fuel lines, that's when the fun started. I didn't have the proper tool to remove the quick disconnect fittings, so I decided to use a pair of pliers. Spoiler alert, pliers do not work the same way as the proper tool. I ended up breaking one of the fittings, which immediately started leaking gas everywhere. Now, I'm not an expert, but I'm pretty sure gasoline on a hot engine isn't the best combination, so I panicked. I grabbed a towel and tried to soak it up as fast as I could, but there was no stopping it. Gasoline was pouring out faster than I could clean it up. I'm not sure if you've ever tried to stop a gasoline leak with a towel in the middle of a hot engine bay, but it's not something I'd recommend. I ran inside and grabbed a fire extinguisher just in case. By some miracle, I managed to stop the leak without setting anything on fire, but the damage had been done. Now, I was dealing with a completely disassembled car, and I had no idea how to fix the mess I'd made. I stared at the parts, trying to figure out what the hell I was doing, but all I could do was mutter, "Well, I've come this far." So, I decided to just continue with the pump replacement, figuring I'd clean up the mess later. The new pump went in without too many issues, thankfully. I reconnected everything, including the fuel lines, and at this point, I was feeling like I was on the home stretch. I was even considering taking it for a test drive before Mike got home. After all, how bad could it be? I turned the key to start the car, and it cranked and cranked and cranked. But it didn't start. I tried again. Nothing. At this point, I was sweating. I had been working on this car for hours, and I still had no idea what was wrong. I checked everything again. Fuel lines were reconnected, the fuel pump was in place, the wires seemed okay. I tried to troubleshoot for another hour or so, but the car just wasn't starting. It was time for Mike to come home, and I knew I was in deep trouble. He pulled into the driveway, looking hopeful as he stepped out of his car. I was standing next to his Civic, looking defeated. Hey man. It's not starting, I said, scratching the back of my head. Mike raised an eyebrow. What do you mean it's not starting? Well, I thought I fixed the fuel pump, but it seems like I made some other stuff worse, I said sheepishly. Mike's face dropped as he looked at his car. What the hell did you do? I tried to explain the series of unfortunate events that had led me to this point, but honestly, I don't think my words really helped. I had broken things, spilled gasoline everywhere, and somehow still managed to not get the car running. Mike was obviously upset, but he didn't get angry. He was more like, well, this is going to be expensive. After calling a tow truck, we took the car to the shop. They took one look at it and told us that not only was the fuel pump installed incorrectly, but the mess I'd made with the fuel lines caused even more damage to the system. They estimated that the repairs would cost around $3,000, 3 times the initial quote for just the fuel pump replacement. Mike was understandably furious, and I had to apologize over and over again. I ended up offering to pay for some of the repairs, but he refused to let me. In the end, I had learned a very valuable lesson. Just because you watch a few YouTube videos doesn't mean you know how to fix a car. I don't think I'll ever offer to fix a friend's vehicle again. So, yeah, that's the story of how I tried to save my friend money and ended up costing him thousands of dollars in repairs. I still don't know how I managed to screw up so badly, but I'll be sticking to smaller, less expensive DIY projects from now on. TLDR, tried to fix my friend's car to save him money, made a complete mess of it, and ended up costing him $3000 in repairs. TIFU by inviting my ex to my wedding, and now I'm a meme. It was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. My wedding day. The culmination of months of planning, endless hours on Pinterest, trying on dresses, and, of course, asking for advice from literally everyone I know. I had the perfect partner, the perfect venue, and what I thought were the perfect friends and family around me. But one thing I didn't plan for was inviting my ex. Well, that was my first mistake. Let me rewind a little bit. I'll admit it, I've always had a tendency to be a people pleaser. I want everyone to be happy, and I avoid conflict whenever possible, even at the expense of my own mental well-being. My ex and I, let's call him Mark, had broken up about 4 years ago. We'd been together for 3 years, and things ended amicably. We weren't fighting, there were no big drama-filled blow-ups, we just grew apart. We both moved on, or so I thought. He got a new girlfriend shortly after we broke up, and I started dating Alex, who I ended up marrying. Now, fast forward to a few months before my wedding day. I was putting together the guest list, and there was a debate I had to resolve. Mark had stayed in touch with my family over the years, mostly because he had been close to my brother. My mom even kept inviting him to family events. I never thought it was weird, until I started thinking about how he might feel when I was getting married. I didn't want to hurt his feelings, so I made the decision to invite him. He's part of the family, I rationalized. It would be rude not to invite him. The logic seemed sound at the time. I thought he'd show up, sit in the back, maybe chat with a few old friends, and then go home. But, oh boy, was I wrong. The first sign that things might go off the rails was when Mark responded to my invitation. He replied almost immediately, saying he'd be there, but it was clear from his message that he hadn't completely moved on from our relationship. He was overly polite, but also a little too eager, if you know what I mean. I could tell he was trying hard to be just a friend, but I also felt a little uncomfortable. I brushed it off, thinking I was being paranoid. After all, I had invited him, right? Wedding day arrives. Everything is going smoothly. The venue is gorgeous, the flowers look perfect, and Alex is looking at me like I'm the only person in the world. I was on cloud 9. Then, Mark showed up. He looked like he had just stepped out of a magazine. Sharp suit, new haircut, the whole package. The thing is, I hadn't realized just how much I had forgotten about the way Mark looked at me. It was intense. Not in a creepy way, but in a way that made me question everything I thought I knew about our friendship. As the ceremony went on, I noticed that Mark seemed to be taking more than just the usual interest in me. He kept glancing over at me during the vows, and there was this weird, lingering look that made me uncomfortable. But I just kept telling myself that I was being paranoid. He was my ex. We had broken up years ago. He was here for closure, or to be supportive, or whatever. But then came the reception. I was sitting at the head table with Alex, laughing and talking with my bridesmaids, when Mark walked over to me. He was holding a drink in his hand, his eyes locked on mine in a way that made my heart race for all the wrong reasons. I thought, okay, here we go. He's going to say something awkward and uncomfortable, and I'm going to have to shut it down politely. Mark leaned in and whispered, "You look stunning." You always did. At first, I thought it was a compliment. But there was something in his tone that made me feel like he wasn't just being nostalgic for the past, he was looking at me like he wanted something more. Something that I couldn't give him. I smiled awkwardly, but before I could even form a response, Mark did something that I'll never forget. He reached across the table and, in a very slow motion, took my hand. Now, I should have immediately pulled away. I should have said something, anything, to let him know that this wasn't appropriate. But for some reason, I didn't. Maybe it was because I didn't want to make a scene at my own wedding. Or maybe it was because I wasn't ready to confront the weirdness of the situation. Either way, the damage had been done. The entire bridal party saw it. The guests noticed. And before I knew it, the room was buzzing. A few minutes later, I caught Alex's eye across the room. His face was pale, and he looked confused. Then, it hit me. He had seen Mark holding my hand. He was upset, and I could tell that this was going to be a conversation that we needed to have, soon. I excused myself from the table, heart pounding, and made my way over to Alex, who was now standing by the bar. His expression was one of disbelief. "Are you kidding me?" Alex whispered, his voice low but filled with emotion. "Your ex just, what was that?" I tried to explain, but I could see the hurt in his eyes. "He's just being a little weird, but it's no big deal, I promise." Alex wasn't having it. "It is a big deal. You invited him. You knew he still had feelings for you. And now look what's happening. You're making me look like a fool." I tried to apologize, but the damage had already been done. The rest of the evening was a blur of awkward silences, tension, and hushed conversations. I tried to salvage the night, but every time I looked at Mark, I saw him looking back at me with those same, longing eyes. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had ruined everything. The next morning, I woke up to an explosion of messages from friends and family. Turns out, someone had snapped a picture of Mark holding my hand and posted it on social media. The caption? "When you invite your ex to your wedding and things get awkward." Within hours, it went viral. The memes were ruthless. Some of my friends tried to be supportive, but the damage had been done. The whole world saw how uncomfortable and inappropriate the situation was, and I became the punchline of a joke that I couldn't undo. The worst part? I had to have a serious conversation with Alex about whether or not we should even stay together after all of this. It's been a few months since the wedding, and while things have calmed down, the incident still lingers. We're working through it, but honestly, I feel like my once perfect wedding day will always be remembered for the wrong reasons. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that sometimes the best intentions lead to the worst outcomes. I shouldn't have invited my ex. I shouldn't have let him make me feel guilty for moving on. And I definitely shouldn't have allowed myself to get caught up in trying to make everyone happy. Because, as it turns out, trying to please everyone only leads to disappointment and a viral meme. TLDR, I invited my ex to my wedding to avoid making him feel left out. He got weird, held my hand during the reception, and it caused a huge scene. The moment went viral, and now I'm the subject of internet memes. My wedding day turned into the most awkward, embarrassing experience of my life. TIFU by trying to fix my relationship by booking a surprise trip for my girlfriend, and it ended with her leaving me. I'll start by saying that I messed up in the worst way possible, and now I'm paying for it. I'm 28, and my girlfriend, Jane, is 26. We've been together for almost 4 years, and for the most part, our relationship was really solid. But like any couple, we went through our ups and downs. Lately, though, things felt off. We hadn't been spending much quality time together, and our communication had definitely started to feel a little strained. She's an incredibly ambitious person, and her job has been more demanding lately, which means she's been working late almost every night. I, on the other hand, work a more traditional 9-to-5 job, and while I'm not necessarily miserable, it's nothing like the constant hustle she deals with. I started feeling a little neglected, and she started feeling like I was just there, but not fully engaged with her life. Long story short, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I had this idea that I could book us a surprise getaway to fix things. I've always been the type to fix problems with grand gestures, but as it turns out, this was the wrong kind of fix. The idea was simple. I'd book a weekend trip to a remote cabin in the mountains. I wanted to get us both out of our usual environment, away from work and distractions. I figured the quiet, secluded setting would help us reconnect, and we could spend quality time talking, eating good food, hiking, and just enjoying each other's company. The more I thought about it, the more I convinced myself this was the perfect solution. Jane loved hiking in nature, and I knew she'd appreciate the peaceful environment. I should have seen the red flags earlier. Jane had been stressed out for weeks, so when I mentioned the trip, her initial reaction was not what I expected. She looked at me like I had just suggested we take a trip to the moon. "You're serious?" she asked, sounding exhausted. I thought she was just tired and maybe needed some time to adjust. I assured her everything was planned. I'd already booked the cabin, arranged for food delivery, and planned activities like a hot tub and a private chef for one of the nights. It was all taken care of. I wanted to take all the pressure off her. But here's where I should have listened. Jane was hesitant. She said she was behind on work and couldn't afford to take time off. She said she needed to get things in order, but I brushed it off, convinced that once we got there, everything would just magically get better. So, I didn't listen. I told her that everything was set, and she didn't have to worry. She didn't seem convinced, but I pushed on. I told her she needed a break, that this trip would help her clear her head, and that I had everything under control. I basically guilt-tripped her into going, even though she clearly wasn't fully on board with it. Fast forward to the weekend of the trip. I pick her up from her place, and she's already visibly tense. I try to keep the mood light, cracking jokes about how we're going to find ourselves in the mountains or something like that. She doesn't laugh. In fact, she doesn't even seem interested in the whole thing. We're in the car for a few hours, driving through winding mountain roads, and Jane barely says a word. When we finally get to the cabin, I can see her expression fall. It's a beautiful place, I'll admit, completely isolated, with a view of the mountains and a giant stone fireplace. But it's also quiet. Too quiet. I start unloading the bags while she stands there looking around, not saying much. I can feel the tension between us, and I'm starting to realize that maybe I've completely misread the situation. The first night, I try to make things fun. We have a nice dinner prepared by the chef, but Jane barely touches her food. She spends most of the time on her phone, replying to work emails, while I try to convince her to relax. The whole time, I'm thinking, this is supposed to be a break. We're supposed to be connecting. But instead, we're sitting in silence, and I can feel her distance growing. By the second day, things had only gotten worse. We were supposed to go hiking, but Jane flat out refused. She said she wasn't in the mood and that she had too much on her mind. I told her we didn't have to hike if she didn't want to, but I started getting frustrated. I'd planned this whole trip, and all I wanted was for us to spend some time together. She, on the other hand, seemed to want to do anything but be with me. That's when the fight started. She told me that I had forced her into this trip, that she didn't want to be here, and that I was trying to fix something that wasn't broken. She said she didn't need a weekend getaway to solve our problems. She needed time to focus on her career and on herself. I tried to argue, but it felt like everything I said only made things worse. By the third day, Jane was done. She said she was going to leave and head back home. I tried to convince her to stay, but she was firm. "I can't do this anymore," she said. "I don't want to be here. I don't even know what I'm doing with you right now." I watched her pack her things, still in shock. I tried to apologize, but she didn't even look at me. She left that afternoon, and I sat alone in the cabin, feeling like I'd just ruined the best thing in my life. Looking back, I see all the mistakes I made. I didn't listen to her. I pushed her into something she wasn't ready for, all because I thought I knew what was best for us. I tried to fix everything with a trip when what she really needed was space, time to think and process everything that had been building up. We broke up a few weeks later. She told me she couldn't keep being in a relationship where I wasn't fully present in her life, where I didn't understand her needs. I tried to fight for us, but in the end, I realized she was right. I didn't give her the space she needed to grow, and I didn't support her in the way she deserved. Now, I'm just sitting here, reflecting on all the ways I went wrong. I know I messed up, and I'll never make the same mistake again. But sometimes I wish I could turn back time and actually listen to her, instead of thinking I could fix everything with a grand gesture. Maybe we could have worked things out, but I guess we'll never know. All I can do now is learn from it and move forward. But if you're reading this, please, don't make the same mistake I did. Communication and understanding are everything. A surprise trip can't fix a relationship that's falling apart. Listen to each other. So, this all started a few weeks ago when my girlfriend and I hit our 1-year anniversary. We're both relatively young, just in our mid-20s, and we've been through a lot together. I really wanted to do something special for our anniversary, so I thought, hey, I'll cook her a fancy dinner. I've cooked a few simple meals before, pasta, sandwiches, that sort of thing, but nothing like this. I figured I'd take it up a notch. I spent the week planning the whole thing. I asked a couple of friends who were good with food for recommendations and looked up recipes online. I decided on a 3-course meal, a starter of roasted red pepper soup, a main course of chicken marsala with mashed potatoes and asparagus, and for dessert, a classic chocolate fondue with fresh strawberries. All of this sounded impressive, right? Like, it was going to be one of those nights that would make her say, "Wow, you really care about me." I even went out and bought some expensive candles and fresh flowers to make the setting more romantic. The night arrived, and I was feeling pretty good about it. I had all the ingredients prepped and ready to go. The only problem? I didn't have as much time as I thought. I had assumed I would be able to get everything done in time, but it quickly became clear I was in over my head. I was running behind on the starter. I started heating up the peppers in the oven for the soup and got distracted by the whole setting the mood thing, dimmed lights, candles, and the fancy table setup. I had everything going at once, the oven for the peppers, the stove for the soup, the potatoes boiling, and the chicken marsala simmering in a pan. I thought I could multitask like a pro, but the reality was, I was more like a circus juggler who'd just had a couple too many drinks. At one point, I realized I'd left the oven on high heat for way too long, and when I checked the peppers, they were almost on fire. Panic mode activated. I grabbed the peppers out of the oven and tossed them into the sink, but there was this thick layer of smoke filling the kitchen. I started flapping my arms like an idiot to clear the air while trying to salvage the rest of the dinner. Meanwhile, my girlfriend was texting me, asking when dinner was ready, and I kept responding with vague answers like, "Almost there," or "Just a couple of minutes." I didn't want her to know that the romantic evening I'd promised was slowly turning into a disaster. Eventually, the smoke settled, but now the soup was ruined. The peppers had a burnt taste to them, and the texture was all wrong. But I couldn't stop now. I figured I'd just try to salvage it with more seasoning and hope she wouldn't notice. So, I strained out the burnt bits, added extra cream, and hoped for the best. I turned my attention back to the chicken marsala. I was cooking the chicken in a skillet, and everything seemed fine at first, but then the wine I was using for the sauce got too hot, and I wasn't paying enough attention. A huge fireball erupted in the pan. I mean, an actual fireball, like something out of a cooking show fail video. It scared the crap out of me. I frantically grabbed the lid to smother the flames, but as I was doing that, the oil started splattering everywhere, and I could hear the distinct sound of sizzling oil in the background. Now I was truly in panic mode. My kitchen was a mess. I had no idea how I was going to salvage the dinner or how I was going to explain all this to my girlfriend. But I didn't want to give up yet. I tried to calm myself down, took a deep breath, and checked the mashed potatoes, which I had been boiling for a while. They were mushy as hell. I had completely forgotten about them while trying to deal with the other chaos. They had turned into a weird potato soup mixture instead of the fluffy mashed potatoes I was aiming for. Great. At this point, I was running out of options. I quickly threw the chicken onto the plate, hoping it wouldn't taste like charred disaster. I scooped up the mashed potatoes, which, at best, looked like an ugly mess, and added the asparagus to try and balance out the dish. It wasn't the meal I envisioned, but it would have to do. I also still had that soup to deal with. The flavor was awful, but I told myself I could make it seem better by blending it more smoothly and adding extra seasoning. Everything was a mess, but I just couldn't let her see how bad it was. I'd come this far, I had to at least make it look good. I put everything on the table and made sure the candles were lit so it didn't look too disastrous. I then texted her, "Dinner's ready, come join me." She came into the kitchen with a huge smile on her face. When she saw the table, she looked impressed at first, but then she took in the actual food. I could see the hesitation in her eyes. She took a small bite of the soup and immediately tried to hide a grimace. "Is something off with the soup?" she asked. I smiled awkwardly and said, "Oh, it's just a little smoky. Adds to the flavor, right?" She didn't say anything but nodded politely. Then, she moved on to the chicken marsala. She took a bite and, bless her, didn't say a word about how overcooked it was. She asked if I needed help with the mashed potatoes, but I told her I had it covered. As she ate, I kept hoping she wouldn't notice how everything was just a sad version of what I had planned. We made it through dinner, and she was incredibly sweet about it, but I could tell she was trying not to laugh at my failed attempt to be chef of the year. She kept complimenting the effort, but I knew deep down she wasn't fooled. After we finished eating, I told her I had one more surprise, dessert. At this point, I was almost embarrassed to even try, but I had to go through with it. The chocolate fondue was an absolute disaster. The chocolate didn't melt properly, and I ended up with a solid mass of goo that refused to cooperate. The strawberries were good though, so we just ate those and called it a night. As we cleaned up, I apologized profusely. She laughed and told me it was sweet that I tried, and she appreciated the effort. In the end, it was a good night, but the kitchen was a war zone, and I learned a valuable lesson: if you don't know how to cook, don't try to impress your girlfriend with a 3-course meal. Stick to what you know. So, yeah, TIFU by trying to impress my girlfriend with a fancy dinner and almost burning down the house. The dinner was a disaster, but at least we both got a good laugh out of it. But I'm never cooking chicken marsala again. TIFU by accidentally exposing my biggest secret to my entire family at a wedding. So this happened a few weeks ago, and it's still haunting me. My family is pretty close-knit, and we always have big family events, mostly weddings, birthdays, holidays, basically, any excuse for a party. This time, it was my cousin Jenna's wedding. She's the youngest in the family, and the whole event was a huge deal. She'd been planning it for months, and I knew it was going to be fancy. We're talking about the kind of wedding that's full of 5-star catering, elegant floral arrangements, and one of those giant cakes that looks more like a piece of art than something you actually eat. Everyone was excited. Now, before I dive into this disaster, I should mention that I've been keeping a pretty big secret from my family for a while. It's something that I've never been able to bring up, and honestly, I was terrified that if it came out, it would destroy my relationship with them. I'd been living with the secret for almost 2 years at this point, so it was a huge weight on my shoulders. My secret? Well, I'd been dating someone who wasn't quite what my family would expect. You see, my family is super traditional. I love them dearly, but they have these very clear, very old-fashioned views on relationships. My parents are high school sweethearts, and their whole world revolves around the idea that people should marry appropriate partners, meaning, someone who fits their cultural, religious, and social norms. But I've been dating a girl who is, well, none of that. She's someone who completely defies everything my family expects, and I didn't know how to bring that up. So for the last 2 years, I'd kept her a secret. We'd go out to dinner, go on trips, and share our lives, but no one in my family knew. I always told them I was too busy to be in a relationship, and they never questioned it, until this wedding. At the wedding, everything started out normal. I was in a great mood, chatting with relatives, sipping on a drink, and looking forward to the evening. Jenna, the bride, was radiant, the ceremony was beautiful, and the reception was going off without a hitch. I was happy to be there and didn't expect anything to go wrong. That is, until my Aunt Betty decided to make a toast. Now, Aunt Betty is one of those relatives who loves a good public moment. She's always the first one to grab the mic at family events and has this habit of sharing embarrassing stories from our childhoods. I should have known better than to trust her when she stood up, glass of wine in hand, and called for everyone's attention. She's been like this my entire life, and I've never been a fan of her speeches, but I didn't think much of it. She began by reminiscing about Jenna as a child, and then, for reasons unknown to me, she turned to me. "And let's not forget our dear nephew over here," she said, waving her hand in my direction. "Always the quiet one at family gatherings, but such a good kid. I remember when he was younger, he used to say that he'd never date anyone who wasn't perfect for him." She paused, looked at me, and smiled. "Isn't that right, sweetie? You always said that, didn't you?" I laughed nervously, hoping she would just move on. "But no," she continued. "So, I've been wondering, why hasn't anyone met this perfect person yet? I mean, I'm dying to know who's been able to win his heart. You've been so secretive, I bet you're keeping a big surprise from us all, huh?" Aunt Betty's voice was full of mischief, and I could feel the eyes of the entire room turn toward me. I tried to play it cool, shrugging it off with a joke. "Well, you know me. I'm a tough cookie to crack. No one's good enough." My family laughed, but there was a hint of curiosity in the air. Aunt Betty wasn't satisfied, though. "Oh, I bet we'll find out sooner or later," she said, winking. "What do you think, everyone? Should we find out who he's been hiding?" The crowd cheered, and my stomach sank. This was it. My secret was about to come out. I had a choice. I could either keep lying and pretend like everything was fine, or I could take a deep breath and tell everyone the truth. But in that moment, I panicked. I wasn't prepared for this. My mind was racing. The pressure of keeping the secret had been building for months, and now, all of a sudden, I had no escape. I looked around the room. There were my cousins, uncles, aunts, and even my grandmother. Everyone was waiting for me to speak. I did the dumbest thing imaginable. Instead of just saying something simple like, "I'm not dating anyone right now," I panicked and blurted out, "Actually, I've been seeing someone for a while now. And she's here tonight." I immediately regretted my words, but there was no turning back. The entire room went silent. It felt like everyone was holding their breath. I could see my mom's face turning pale, my dad's eyes narrowing, and my grandma looking confused. No one said anything for a few seconds, which felt like an eternity. Finally, my cousin Rachel, who's usually the more progressive one in the family, stood up. "Who is she?" she asked, her voice sounding a bit too loud. Well, she's right there." I pointed toward the entrance of the hall, where I knew my girlfriend, Emily, was standing. I hadn't told her about my plan to out myself like this, but it was too late to back out. I had no idea how this was going to go. To my surprise, Emily smiled and waved, walking toward me. She was confident, but I could tell she was a little nervous too. As she got closer, I saw my mom's face tighten. The tension in the room was unbearable. "Hi, everyone," Emily said, her voice carrying throughout the room. "I'm Emily. I've been dating / my name, for 2 years now." The silence stretched on. No one seemed to know what to say. My mom was the first to speak. You've been seeing someone? For 2 years?" She sounded hurt, more than surprised. "Why didn't you tell us, / my name?" I tried to explain, but words just weren't coming out right. My family was looking at us like we were a complete mystery, and I felt the weight of their judgment. Eventually, after what felt like an eternity of awkward silence and confused glances, the conversation turned to something else, but the damage was done. Emily and I left the wedding early, and since then, I've barely spoken to anyone in my family. I don't know what to do now. My secret is out, and while I'm glad Emily is no longer a secret, I feel like I've betrayed my family. I should have told them sooner, but I couldn't find the courage. So, yeah. I definitely messed up. Now, I have to figure out how to fix the rift I've caused and repair my relationship with my family. TLDR, accidentally outed myself and my girlfriend at my cousin's wedding because my aunt made a toast, and now my family is super disappointed and I have no idea how to make things right. TIFU by trying to impress my new girlfriend with my cooking skills, and nearly burning down her apartment. So, to set the scene, I, 28M, recently started dating this amazing girl, Kate, 26F. We met about 2 months ago through mutual friends, and things have been going pretty well. We're at that stage where everything is exciting, new, and we both want to impress each other. Kate is an absolute gem, funny, intelligent, and she has an amazing smile that makes me feel like I'm living in a rom-com. I wanted to do something special for her, to show that I'm thoughtful and can go the extra mile. So, naturally, I decided to cook her dinner. Now, I'm no Gordon Ramsay, but I can hold my own in the kitchen. I've made pasta, stir-fries, and even tried my hand at a couple of fancy dishes in the past. But I'm also the type of person who gets overly confident in situations where I should maybe just chill. That's where this whole story goes south. I decided that for this special night, I would make her a 3-course meal. Nothing too crazy, but something nice. I'd start with a simple appetizer, then a hearty main course, and finish off with a lovely dessert. I had been to her apartment a few times, but it was the first time I'd be cooking for her, and I was determined to make it a night she'd never forget. In hindsight, I should have kept it simple. But no, I wanted to really go all in and impress her with my culinary skills. The menu was as follows: 1 appetizer, a simple caprese salad with mozzarella, tomatoes, and basil. 2 main course, chicken marsala with mashed potatoes and sautéed vegetables. 3 dessert, chocolate lava cakes, because why not be extra? I arrived at her apartment a couple of hours before she was supposed to come over so I could get everything prepped. Everything started off fine. I chopped the tomatoes, arranged the basil, and set the mozzarella aside. The salad was easy. But then I hit a snag. I was cooking the chicken for the marsala and realized I didn't have enough of the marsala wine. At this point, I'm feeling like a genius who can solve any problem, so I decided to sub in some white wine I found in her kitchen. No big deal, right? Wrong. I'm cooking, humming a little tune, when I suddenly smell something odd. At first, I brush it off, thinking maybe it's just the wine cooking off, or the garlic, or whatever. But then I see the smoke. Not a little bit of smoke, like a puff here and there. No. I'm talking a full-blown cloud of thick, gray smoke filling the kitchen. It was like a fog machine had gone off in there. Panic starts to set in, but I'm still trying to play it cool. I open the windows, turn on the fan, and frantically try to stir the chicken, but it's too late. The smell of burnt chicken and cheap white wine is everywhere. But I'm not a quitter. No, I'm not. I try to salvage it. I grab some tongs and yank the chicken out of the pan, trying to salvage whatever isn't completely charred. The problem, of course, is that I have no idea what I'm doing. I think I can still fix it. So, I move on to the mashed potatoes, trying to get some semblance of normalcy back. But the potatoes are lumpy, because I didn't properly mash them. I forgot to season them. They're basically just boiled potatoes in a sad pile. And the veggies? Let's just say they're a shade of brown I've never seen before. At this point, I realize I've probably ruined the entire meal, and Kate isn't even there yet. I'm on the verge of losing it when I hear the door open. Kate's home. I panic, and in a moment of utter genius, sarcasm, I decide to just cover everything up. So, I frantically grab the charred chicken and throw it in the sink, hoping to hide the evidence. I throw some salt and pepper on the mashed potatoes, trying to give them some flavor, and I slap the sad, overcooked veggies onto the plate. There's no saving it now. At this point, I'm sweating through my shirt. I don't know if I should just tell her what happened or try to salvage it somehow. Kate walks in, and the first thing she says is, "Wow, it smells interesting in here." I force a smile, trying to look calm, but I can see the concern in her eyes as she looks around. The place is a mess. The kitchen is a war zone, and the smoke detector is beeping away like a clock counting down to a disaster. I tell her, yeah, there was a little incident with the chicken, but everything's fine now. Let's eat. We sit down at the table, and I serve her the plates with the sad excuse for a meal. She takes a bite of the chicken, and I can see her face change. It's like she's trying so hard to be polite, but she's struggling to keep a straight face. I can feel the sweat pouring down my back as I try to keep the conversation light. So, what do you think? It's a little crispy, but it's still good, right? She looks up from her plate and smiles. It's unique. I've never had chicken quite like this before. I try to laugh it off, but I'm not fooling anyone. The truth is, I can't eat this food. It's terrible. The chicken is burnt to a crisp, the potatoes are underseasoned and lumpy, and the vegetables are just too wrong. Kate is being so sweet about it, trying to not make me feel bad, but I know deep down she's probably wondering how she ever agreed to this date. We finish the meal, or rather, we attempt to finish the meal, and I quickly offer to clean up. I try to salvage what's left of my dignity by washing the dishes. Kate is still being incredibly sweet, and I can tell she's not mad or anything. But the whole night, I can't shake the feeling that I've totally botched this. She tells me, I had a great time, despite the cooking mishap. I try to laugh it off, but inside, I'm cringing. She hugs me before she leaves, and I swear I can smell the burnt chicken on her clothes, too. The next morning, she texted me to say that she was still thinking about the night and that she wanted to try again, but maybe with takeout this time. I was relieved, but I also knew I'd never live this down. At least she didn't bail on me after my disastrous attempt to cook. So, yeah. TIFU by trying to impress my girlfriend with my cooking, and instead, I almost turned her apartment into a disaster zone. I'll be sticking to ordering in from now on. TIFU, by attempting to impress my girlfriend with my cooking skills, only to accidentally turn our apartment into a disaster zone, almost burn down the building, and leave her questioning whether she should still be dating me. So, for some context, I'm not exactly a culinary expert. Growing up, my family did a lot of takeout, and when I moved out on my own, I got by with microwave meals and the occasional pasta dish. But I've always wanted to impress my girlfriend, Emily, with something special. She loves cooking, and I thought that by learning how to cook a proper meal, I could show her I'm not just some helpless guy who burns cereal. Plus, she's always talking about how nice it is when people make an effort in the kitchen, so I thought, why not give it a shot? It all started last Friday. I had this big idea to cook dinner for Emily and surprise her with a homemade meal. We had planned to watch a movie, and I thought it would be a great way to set the mood for a relaxing evening. After a little bit of research on YouTube, I found a recipe for chicken parmesan that seemed simple enough. I watched the video twice, made a list of ingredients, and went to the store like I was on a mission. I was ready to go full Gordon Ramsay mode. When I got back home, I started preparing everything. I prepped the chicken breasts, seasoned them, and then realized I had no idea how to properly coat them in breadcrumbs. But I told myself, it's fine, you've got this. I watched another video on how to do it right, tried again, and finally got the chicken ready to be cooked. Things were looking good. At this point, I figured I could handle the rest, but that's when everything started to spiral out of control. I put the chicken in the pan to fry, and I swear to God, I had a moment where I felt like I was cooking in some kind of high-pressure competition. I could feel the heat rising, and I was so focused on flipping the chicken that I didn't even notice how much oil was splattering all over the stove. After about 5 minutes of trying to keep the oil under control, I realized there was now a small flame licking the edge of the pan. A tiny panic set in. I quickly grabbed a towel and tried to pat down the oil before the flame spread, but instead of being calm and measured like you'd see in a cooking show, I kind of went into a full-blown meltdown. The towel touched the pan, caught on fire, and started to burn. In that moment, I didn't know if I should put the towel in the sink, toss it out the window, or dropkick it into the neighbor's yard. I did none of those things. I dropped it on the kitchen floor, where it just burned a small hole in the rug. Emily had just stepped out of the bathroom and immediately smelled something burning. I looked at her, my face probably as pale as a ghost, and said, everything's fine. Just a little, crispy. She frowned but didn't say anything, probably sensing my panic. I turned off the stove and tried to put out the fire with the towel, which was still smoldering on the floor, and a small glass of water, but instead, I made things worse by splashing oil everywhere. At this point, the whole kitchen smelled like a greasy disaster, and my heart was racing faster than it probably should have been for someone making a simple meal. Maybe we should order something instead? Emily suggested, but I was determined to salvage the night. I wasn't about to back down from my goal of impressing her. I threw the charred towel into the sink, turned on the fan, and continued to frantically attempt to cook the chicken like I had any idea what I was doing. After what felt like an eternity, I managed to get the chicken out of the pan, and I triumphantly placed it in the oven to finish cooking. Then came the pasta. I boiled the water, added the pasta, and in my heightened state of anxiety, forgot to check the timer. The noodles, instead of being perfectly al dente, ended up being a sticky, mushy mess. At this point, the apartment smelled like burnt oil, charred food, and desperation. Emily, bless her heart, tried to stay upbeat, even though I could tell she wasn't thrilled with what was going on. I plated the food in what I thought was a somewhat presentable manner and set it down in front of her, hoping she wouldn't notice the disaster that was the chicken parmesan. I sat down, nervously waiting for her to take a bite. She looked at the plate, then at me, and then hesitated before taking a cautious forkful of the chicken. There was a long pause. She chewed slowly, then looked at me with a forced smile. "It's interesting," she said, her tone a little too diplomatic for my liking. "What did you do to the chicken?" I laughed nervously, rubbing the back of my neck. "Well, I kind of wanted to give it that extra crispy texture." "Yeah, I can tell," she said, trying to maintain her composure. It wasn't even that the food tasted bad, it was that everything about it was off. The chicken was both too dry and too greasy at the same time, the pasta was mushy, and the sauce I had poured on top was nothing like the rich, delicious marinara I had imagined. It was more like a watery, bland mess. As we sat there eating, or, more accurately, attempting to eat, I realized that my grand plan to impress her had backfired spectacularly. I had no idea what I was doing in the kitchen, and in my desperate attempt to salvage it, I had made a full-blown disaster out of what should have been a simple meal. To make matters worse, the smoke alarm went off halfway through the meal, which only added to the chaos. "Maybe we should just order pizza," I suggested, trying to lighten the mood. "I think I'm just not cut out for this." Emily smiled, putting her fork down. "I think that's probably a good idea." After we ordered pizza, we laughed about it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I had seriously messed up. I tried so hard to impress her with something I thought was simple, but in the end, it was just a reminder that maybe I should leave the cooking to the experts, or at least stick to microwave dinners for a while. To this day, I think Emily appreciates the effort, but I don't think she'll ever trust me with dinner again. And I definitely learned my lesson. If you can't even make chicken parmesan without causing a small fire, it might be best to leave the cooking to someone who knows what they're doing. We still laugh about it, though. That's probably the only thing I got right that night. Hey, friends! If you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. So, I'm a pretty laid-back guy, and I've always prided myself on being able to handle anything life throws at me. That is, until the other night, when I had a whole series of events go sideways. Like, to the point that I'm still trying to piece together exactly what happened. It all started with a phone call. I was sitting at home after work, enjoying a quiet evening alone, when my best friend Tyler called. Tyler is the kind of guy who, if he needs help with something, he'll call you at the last possible moment and expect you to drop everything and be there. So when the phone rang, I knew I was about to get roped into something last minute. What I didn't expect was the request that came with the call. "Hey, man, I need a huge favor." "Sure, what's up?" I replied, not really thinking anything of it. "I'm in a bit of a bind." "You remember Rachel, right? From that party last year?" I froze. Rachel was this girl Tyler had been seeing on and off for a few months. I didn't like her much. She seemed nice at first, but she was kind of intense. She had this way of making everything feel like an emergency, and I had seen how she'd manipulated Tyler in the past. I always thought he could do better, but he was stubborn. "Yeah. What about her?" I asked cautiously. "She needs someone to pick her up from this event, and I can't make it. Something came up with work, and I'm stuck here. Could you grab her?" Sure. I guess. "Where's she at?" Tyler gave me the address, and I thought that was the end of the conversation. But no, that was just the beginning. "Okay, but there's one more thing," Tyler added. "Of course there is." I sighed, leaning back in my chair. "She might be a little emotional when you get there. Just, be patient with her." "Emotional? How emotional?" I asked, already regretting my decision to answer the phone. "Honestly, I'm not sure. I think she got into a bit of a fight with some people at the event, and she's upset. But she'll probably just need a ride and some space. Nothing crazy." "Got it. I'll pick her up, no problem." I hung up, grabbed my keys, and headed out to my car. I was already feeling uneasy about the whole situation, but what could I do? Tyler was my best friend, and he needed me. Even though I didn't want to be involved in any of Rachel's drama, I wasn't about to leave him hanging. I got to the address Tyler had given me, which was this upscale building downtown where Rachel was attending some fancy networking event. I parked and sent Rachel a text, letting her know I was there. She quickly responded with a location inside the building, so I made my way in, hoping that this would be quick and easy. When I got to the lobby, a woman in a suit stopped me. "Can I help you?" she asked, eyeing me curiously. "Yeah, I'm here to pick up Rachel." "Tyler's friend?" "Oh, sure. She's upstairs. Just take the elevator to the top floor. Room 902. I thanked her and followed her directions. When the elevator doors opened on the 9th floor, I was greeted by an odd mix of laughter and shouting. It sounded like some sort of party was still going on, even though it was pretty late. I walked down the hallway, trying to spot the right room. Suddenly, I heard a voice. You're the one who's supposed to pick me up, right?" I turned around to see Rachel standing in the middle of the hallway, arms crossed, her face flushed with emotion. She looked disheveled, like she'd been crying or screaming just moments before. Her makeup was smeared, and her usually perfectly put-together appearance was now, well, not so much. I tried to be calm, but something in my gut told me this wasn't going to go the way I hoped. "Hey, Rachel." "Yeah, I'm here to take you home." "Finally. I've been waiting forever." "Do you have any idea what kind of night I've had?" she snapped, not even giving me a chance to answer. "First, I get stuck in this stupid event where no one even cares about me, then I get into an argument with some people, and now you're late." She was nearly shouting by the end of it, and I honestly didn't know what to do. I wasn't used to dealing with this kind of drama. I mean, I'm not exactly an expert in handling crying women who are mad at the world. But I'd been through enough with Tyler to know I had to at least try to be understanding. "Hey, I'm not late. I just got here. Let's just get out of here, okay?" I said, trying to keep my tone calm. Whatever, she muttered, turning on her heels and walking toward the exit. I followed her, trying not to roll my eyes at the whole situation. But of course, that wasn't the end of it. As we reached the parking garage, Rachel suddenly stopped dead in her tracks. "You didn't bring my car?" she asked, a mix of disbelief and annoyance in her voice. No. I thought you needed a ride." "You know, from Tyler's place," I said, already sensing where this was going. "You didn't bring my car?" "Why wouldn't you bring my car?" she repeated, starting to pace. She was getting more worked up by the second. "I didn't know you needed your car. Tyler just said he wanted me to pick you up," I tried to explain. "Ugh, forget it," Rachel shouted, throwing her hands up in the air. "I don't even want to go home anymore. I'm done with this." I stood there, unsure of what to do next. At this point, she was practically shaking with frustration. "Look, if you want me to drive you somewhere else, that's fine, but I can't just sit here." Suddenly, she cut me off with the most dramatic thing she could have said: "I'm going to walk home." "You're useless." Without warning, she stormed off into the parking garage, heading for the exit, clearly determined to make her point. I stood there for a few moments, utterly bewildered. Should I follow her? Should I leave? I had no idea. So, after a minute of internal struggle, I decided to text Tyler and let him know what had happened. His response was swift: "Did you try to calm her down? She's been like this all night." At that point, I realized there was no way I was going to fix this. She wasn't just upset, she was totally unwilling to accept any help. So I did what any rational person would do: I left. I'm still not sure what happened that night, but I learned one valuable lesson: never, ever trust Tyler when he says, "She's just a little emotional." Anyway, that's the last time I pick up Rachel from anything, and I haven't spoken to her since. Tyler and I are still friends, but I think he knows better than to ever ask me for a favor involving her again. So yeah, TIFU by getting caught up in a friend's drama and trying to be the good guy. TIFU by accidentally tripping a fire alarm during a funeral for my girlfriend's grandfather. So this happened a few months ago, and I'm only just now beginning to forgive myself. I, 28M, had been dating my girlfriend, Emily, 27F, for about 6 months when her grandfather passed away. Now, I'd never met him, but I knew from the way she talked about him that he was a big part of her life. He was apparently this warm, stoic, no-nonsense kind of man who always wore suspenders, swore by black coffee, and had a way of telling you that you were being stupid without making you feel stupid. I wanted to be supportive, so when she asked me to come with her to the funeral, I didn't hesitate. The funeral was in a small town about an hour and a half away. The kind of town where there are more churches than grocery stores. The service was held at this old Catholic church, big stone building, stained glass, pipe organ, the whole 9 yards. It smelled like incense and wood polish and something vaguely lemony. The place was packed. Apparently everyone in town knew and loved the guy. Emily was sitting with her immediate family up front, and I was a couple of pews behind them, squeezed between her cousin I'd just met and some very solemn elderly man who may or may not have been an uncle. I didn't want to intrude too much during the family parts, but I was doing my best to be supportive. Now, I'm a bit of a fidgeter when I'm nervous, and I was nervous. I didn't know the proper etiquette, when to sit, when to kneel, and everything felt hyper-formal. I kept adjusting my tie, crossing and uncrossing my legs. My shoes were new, stiff and shiny and not really broken in. And it was hot. Like, unseasonably warm, and the church had no AC. At one point during the priest's eulogy, I started to feel dizzy. I figured it was a mix of heat, nerves, and probably the lack of breakfast. I didn't want to faint in the middle of a funeral, so I quietly excused myself and slipped out of the pew. I intended to sneak into the hallway, splash some water on my face, and come back like nothing happened. I found the hallway and spotted a door labeled restrooms. I pushed it open and stepped inside. What I didn't realize was that the church had recently undergone some renovations. The bathrooms had been moved to the other side of the building, and this door now led to a storage room where they kept altar supplies and decorations. Here's where the real F ****** up begins. As I opened the door and stepped in, I tripped. Specifically, my stupid stiff shoe caught the edge of a floor mat. I stumbled forward and reached out to grab something, anything, to steady myself. What I managed to grab was a red pull handle on the wall. Yes, you guessed it, the fire alarm. Instantly, the entire church was filled with a blaring siren and flashing lights. Time froze. At first, I didn't even realize what I had done. I thought maybe someone had pulled it elsewhere or there was an actual fire. But then I looked at my hand and saw the little plastic flap hanging open and the handle in the downward position. Cue immediate, heart-plummeting realization. Panic set in. I tried to push the handle back up, thinking maybe I could undo it. Nope. Irreversible. My next bright idea was to just close the door and walk away like nothing happened. But of course, people were already standing up in the chapel. The priest had stopped mid-sentence. Emily turned around, eyes wide. Within 2 minutes, the fire department showed up. Full gear, hoses, axes, the whole crew. Apparently, in small towns, there's not much else going on, so they treat every call like a 5-alarm blaze. I watched in horror from the hallway as they poured into the sanctuary, barking orders and waving people outside. Someone wheeled the casket out as a precaution. I almost threw up. Outside, the guests stood on the church lawn in a solemn, confused huddle. Emily found me quickly. "What the hell happened?" she asked. And like the idiot I am, I tried to lie. "I think someone tripped it in the back," I said, which immediately backfired because the priest, God bless him, came over and said, "Actually, the alarm was triggered in the West Wing hallway. Right by the old storage room." Emily's eyes narrowed. "Isn't that where you said you were going?" I gave up. I confessed everything right there on the lawn in front of her family and about 50 mourners. There was a long silence. Her uncle laughed. Her mother did not. Emily just stared at me like I was an alien. The firemen eventually cleared the building, declared it safe, and the service resumed, sort of. The tone was different. Tense. The priest tried to joke about it, saying that maybe John wanted to go out with a bang, but the laughter was sparse. Afterwards, during the reception, I tried to apologize to everyone. Some people were gracious. Others, not so much. Emily's grandmother refused to speak to me, and one of her cousins started calling me Fire Drill Phil even though my name isn't Phil. The car ride home was quiet for a while. Eventually, Emily sighed and said, "Look, I know it was an accident. But next time, maybe just sit still." We did stay together, by some miracle. Her family has mostly forgiven me, though every Thanksgiving someone brings it up like it's a beloved family anecdote. I haven't stepped foot in a church since. Moral of the story, if you're nervous, maybe just sweat it out. Literally anything is better than setting off a fire alarm during a funeral. TIFU by accidentally going on a family vacation with the wrong family. So this happened a few years ago, but the emotional trauma is still fresh every time someone brings up the word cruise. At the time, I, 25M, was working a soul-crushing job at a tech startup that promised me equity but gave me stress hives instead. I hadn't taken a vacation in 3 years. My friend Matt, who I've known since high school, called me out of the blue and said, "My family has a cruise planned, someone dropped out last minute, it's already paid for, just bring money for drinks and excursions." His mom apparently loved me from the few times I'd been over during college, and insisted they bring someone fun. I guess the bar was low. Desperate for an escape, I said yes. He sent me the details. 7-day Caribbean cruise. Departing from Miami. Ship name, date, time, all that. I booked a one-way flight to Miami, excited to finally drink margaritas in the sun and maybe forget my login password for Jira. Here's where things begin to unravel. The day of the cruise, I land in Miami around noon. I grab a lift to the port, feeling like a badass because I managed to pack everything into a carry-on. I get to the terminal and text Matt, "Here. Where you guys at?" No reply. I shrug it off. Maybe he's going through security. I get in line, show them my ID, and say I'm with the Walker family, Matt's last name. The lady at the counter checks something on her screen, smiles, and says, "Ah yes, you're with the Walkers. Here's your boarding pass, you're in stateroom 12B. I'm thinking, okay cool, maybe they checked in already and gave my name. I board the ship and head to the stateroom. It's bigger than I expected. Like, way nicer. There's a bottle of champagne on the table and a note that says Happy Anniversary. I'm a little confused, but I assume it's just something the cruise line does. Maybe they do this for all guests. I sit down, crack open the champagne, because why not, and wait. 20 minutes later, a couple walks in. Mid-40s, both wearing matching cruise hair don't care shirts. They stop dead in their tracks when they see me sipping their champagne. "Oh. I think I'm in the wrong room," I say, standing up. "You think," the guy says, very confused but polite. I grab my bag and walk out, mortified. I double-check the stateroom number. 12B, that's what the lady said. I go back down to the front desk and tell them there's been a mistake. They check again. Then the woman frowns. "You're not on the passenger list," she says. "Who booked your trip?" "My friend Matt Walker," I say. She types something. "We have a Walker family aboard, but no Matthew." Now I'm freaking out a bit. I call Matt. No answer. I check the email he sent with the itinerary. My stomach drops. The dates are identical. The cruise line is the same. But the ship name is different. I'm on the wrong damn boat. I had boarded a ship with a family that coincidentally also had the last name Walker. They had a no-show for one of the rooms, so when I showed up and said I was with the Walkers, they just assumed I was the missing guest. No ID check beyond name match because apparently cruise security in 2019 was the Wild West. The worst part? The ship had already started disembarking. I could literally see the gap between the ship and the dock widening like the gaping maw of my idiocy. The cruise staff informed me that I could not get off until the ship docked at the next port, in 2 days. I was now an unregistered guest on a cruise with a family of strangers. They brought in security. I explained everything. Showed them Matt's email. They made some calls and confirmed my story. But I couldn't be removed from the ship without them turning around or calling the Coast Guard, which they weren't about to do for one very dumb adult man. So they let me stay. On the condition that I keep a low profile and stay out of guest-only areas. For the next 48 hours, I lived like a cruise ship cryptid. I wasn't allowed to use the pool or attend events. They gave me meal vouchers for the staff cafeteria. I slept in a tiny room with 2 bunk beds and a porthole the size of a salad plate. Every now and then a staff member would walk by and whisper, "Are you the guy who got on the wrong ship?" like I was a myth. Meanwhile, I'm texting Matt furiously. When I finally get a message back, it's just, "Dude, where are you?" He and his family were 2 ships down at the same port, also sailing out that afternoon. He assumed I ghosted them or missed my flight. He didn't even think to check the terminal because he figured I'd just show up at the room. 2 days later we docked in Cozumel. I was escorted off the ship like a prisoner being released into the wild. The cruise line arranged for me to fly to the next port of Matt's actual cruise, because, incredibly, it wasn't too late to join them. I spent the next 5 days actually enjoying myself, but not a single Walker on that ship let me live it down. To this day, whenever anyone asks about my worst travel experience, I tell them how I accidentally impersonated someone's anniversary guest and spent 2 days hiding in a cruise ship basement like Gollum. And the worst part? The other Walker family never got their champagne back. TIFU by pretending to be a contractor to get out of a date. So this happened about 2 weeks ago and I'm still unraveling the consequences. I, 29 live in a mid-sized city and work as a software engineer. I'm not exactly the most social guy, so my friends convinced me to get on dating apps to expand my circle and touch grass, as they put it. I matched with a woman, we'll call her Sarah, and after a few days of texting, she asked if I wanted to get dinner. She was attractive, funny, into a lot of the same nerdy stuff as me, but something just didn't click for me. Maybe it was the timing. Maybe it was the way she used your instead of your. Call me petty. Anyway, instead of just being honest like a normal adult, I panicked and made up a terrible excuse. I told her that I'd taken on a freelance contracting job on the side, doing home renovations. The job was to redo a kitchen, and I'd be working 12-hour days for the next 2 weeks. In my head, it seemed like a believable way to gently ghost someone. She was super understanding. Too understanding. She got really interested in the details of the work. She asked what materials I preferred, what kind of counters I was putting in, if I had any recommendations for backsplash tile. I'd accidentally hit on her HGTV obsession. I bullshitted my way through it using vague terms and YouTube knowledge I'd picked up from trying to fix a leaky faucet last year. Then came the big mistake. She asked if she could hire me. I laughed it off, said I wasn't taking clients right now. But she was persistent. Turns out, her aunt owns a few rental properties, and one of them had a kitchen that needed updating. She offered to pay me $7,000 for a simple refresh. I should have come clean right then and there, but I didn't. Instead, I made up a name for a fake company, Cedar and Slate Homeworks. I even made a Gmail for it to seem official, thinking it would buy me some time until she lost interest. Nope. She emailed me. I ignored it. Then her aunt called me. Apparently Sarah gave her my number, and she wanted to talk business. I should have come clean. But I didn't. Why? Because I was an idiot. A big, dumb, stupid idiot with a fragile ego and a fear of confrontation. I thought I could just wing it. So I showed up to the rental house. Let me paint this picture for you. I'm in a pair of boots I borrowed from my roommate, cargo pants from Goodwill, and a flannel shirt with paint stains that I literally applied myself using leftover craft paint. I show up with a tape measure, a notebook, and a head full of YouTube how-to videos. The aunt, we'll call her Deb, was super nice. She walked me through the kitchen, explained what she wanted, new cabinets, counters, maybe some lighting fixtures. I nodded, took fake notes, made thoughtful noises. Told her I'd send an estimate in a few days. In and out. I thought that would be the end of it. But then Sarah texted me again. Excited to see what you do with the kitchen. My aunt loved you, smiley face. I was trapped. So I did what any panicked nerd with too much time and too little sense would do. I made a fake invoice. I listed materials, labor, disposal fees, permits. Totaled it up to $6,800. I sent it from my fake company email and thought maybe they'd balk at the price and back out. They didn't. They said yes. They gave me a $3,400 deposit. I wish I were joking. I now had over $3,000 of someone else's money, a fake business, and a kitchen to remodel. I should have immediately returned the money and confessed, but instead I spiraled into full-blown madness. I rented a Home Depot truck and filled it with boxes of random materials, tiles, screws, 2x4s, anything to look busy. I even recruited my buddy Dave, who knew part of the story, to help me unload it at the house so I'd look like a real contractor. For the next week, I showed up to the house every morning at 9 a.m. I pretended to work. I unscrewed cabinet doors and put them back on. I painted swatches of color on the walls, then painted over them again. I ran a shop vac at random intervals to create the sound of productivity. I even staged supply delays to explain the lack of progress. But the real kicker? Sarah started bringing me coffee. Every morning. She'd swing by on her way to work, drop off a latte, and make conversation. She thought it was cute how hands-on I was. I don't know what was more exhausting, pretending to renovate a kitchen or pretending to be a competent, well-adjusted adult. By day 9, I cracked. Deb stopped by unexpectedly and saw me using the shop vac in an empty room. She asked why the counters hadn't been removed yet. I gave her a half-baked answer about waiting for a subcontractor. She squinted at me, then looked at the cabinet I had reinstalled. It was upside down. Like, cartoonishly, undeniably upside down. She didn't say anything. Just pursed her lips and nodded slowly. That night, I got a text from Sarah. It said, "We need to talk." We met at a coffee shop the next morning. She was calm, unnervingly calm. She asked me if I was really a contractor. I tried to lie for maybe 3 seconds before I just melted like a microwaved marshmallow. I confessed everything. The fake company. The fake job. The invoice. The boots. All of it. She just stared at me for the longest time, then said, "You went through all this just to avoid dinner with me?" That's when I realized how badly I'd messed up, not just the scam, but the fact that I'd made someone feel like they were that undesirable. I apologized. Profusely. I told her it wasn't about her, it was about me being a coward with commitment issues and a weak spine. She didn't scream. She didn't throw her drink in my face. She just shook her head and left. Deb got her deposit back, by the way. I drained my savings and sent her the full $3,400 along with a typed apology letter. She hasn't responded. I deleted all my dating apps, obviously. I also deleted the fake Gmail account and burned the flannel shirt. Every now and then, I drive by that house and see the same kitchen window, still unchanged, still mocking me. Moral of the story? If you're not feeling a date, just say so. Don't create an entire fake business, accept a deposit, and try to gaslight your way through a renovation. Because one day, someone's going to notice the cabinet is upside down. TIFU by lying about being a dog trainer to impress a girl and accidentally ruining a wedding. So, I, 27M, met this girl, 25F, at a mutual friend's birthday party about 6 weeks ago. She was standing near the drinks table, laughing at some joke I didn't hear, and I swear the world slowed down for a second. Her name was Marissa, and she was everything smart, funny, absurdly beautiful, and had this kind of effortless confidence that made my brain short-circuit. We got to talking and I mentioned I was good with dogs because the host's golden retriever kept coming to sit by me. What I meant was that I had a dog growing up and now I sometimes watch my neighbor's corgi. What she heard was that I was a dog trainer. She lit up instantly. She volunteers at a shelter and loves dogs more than most people. And in my desperate attempt to keep her interested, I did what any other insecure idiot would do, I leaned into the lie. "Oh yeah, I've trained everything from little lapdogs to police canines," I said with a confidence I had no right to possess. She was impressed. I felt amazing. It was like unlocking a cheat code to her attention. We started dating. For the first few weeks, it wasn't a big deal. I just dodged in-depth questions about training methods and made vague statements like it's all about establishing dominance early or consistency is key. Stuff I picked up from watching The Dog Whisperer as a teenager. Then came the wedding invitation. Marissa's cousin, Caroline, was getting married in the countryside, and the family was bringing their dogs because the venue allowed it. Caroline's golden retriever, Muffin, was going to be the ring bearer. Very cute, very wholesome. The problem? Muffin had started acting out. Peeing in the house. Chewing shoes. Ignoring commands. Caroline was freaking out, and Marissa, brimming with confidence in her new boyfriend, said, "Oh, don't worry, Alex is a dog trainer. He'll get Muffin back in shape before the big day." I should have come clean right then. I really should have. But I panicked and nodded like a fool. Suddenly I'm booked to work with Muffin the next 3 weekends before the wedding. Caroline is desperate, Marissa is beaming, and I'm internally screaming. Weekend 1. I watched a ton of YouTube videos the night before and walked into Caroline's house armed with treats, a clicker, and sheer delusion. Muffin is a sweetheart but incredibly hyper. I gave some basic commands, sit, stay, and she obeyed half the time. I chalked the rest up to retraining and blamed owner inconsistency. Weekend 2. I tried to get Muffin used to the little satin pillow with the rings on it. She hated it. Chewed it like a toy and ran in circles. Caroline looked worried, but I gave a confident nod and said, she's testing boundaries. Weekend 3, disaster. Muffin ran out the front door, straight into the neighbor's yard, and tore up their flower bed. Caroline had to reimburse them for damages. She called me unconventional but still trusted I had it under control. Marissa even kissed me and said I was so good under pressure. The wedding day. It's an outdoor ceremony at a beautiful little vineyard. Everyone's dressed to the nines. Muffin has been fitted with a fresh pillow, complete with decoy rings. The real ones would be handed off later, thank God. My job was to get Muffin down the aisle on cue. I stationed myself behind the last row of chairs with a treat pouch, whispering encouragements. The music starts. People stand. The flower girl goes. The maid of honor follows. And then, it's Muffin's turn. I signal her. She looks at me. Then she looks at the crowd. Too many people. Too much noise. Muffin bolts. Not just a haha, silly dog ran off a bit kind of bolt. I mean full throttle zoom eyes, launching into the crowd like a four-legged missile. She knocks over a tray of champagne glasses. She slips between the legs of the best man, causing him to stumble and say something that sounded a lot like *********************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************** Imagine 80 guests in formal attire watching a golden retriever leap onto the main table and bury her face in the wedding cake. Muffin's face and paws are now covered in white and pink frosting as she joyfully destroys what must have been a $500 cake. Gasps and screams erupt. The officiant drops his binder. The photographer is snapping away in what I can only assume is professional panic. Caroline is crying. Her new husband is trying to pull Muffin off the cake, but the dog thinks it's a game and dives under the table. Everyone turns to me. The fake dog trainer. I try to salvage it. I call Muffin, whistle, slap my leg. She ignores me completely. A groomsman mutters, "Nice training, bro," which might as well have been a gunshot to my ego. Eventually, someone grabs Muffin and carries her out, tail still wagging, snout caked in frosting. The ceremony resumes, but the mood is shot. Half the guests are murmuring about the dog guy. Caroline doesn't speak to me. Marissa doesn't even look at me. On the drive back, she's silent. I confess everything. The lie. The panic. The YouTube videos. She doesn't yell. She just says, "You lied about something that mattered to me." And now my cousin's wedding is a meme. I haven't heard from her since. So yeah. TIFU by pretending to be a dog trainer, failing to train a dog, and unleashing frosting-coated chaos on what should have been the happiest day of someone's life. At least Muffin had fun. TIFU by lying to my girlfriend about being a gourmet chef, and accidentally catering her entire family reunion. So this happened a couple of months ago, but I'm only now crawling out of the emotional fallout enough to tell the story. I, 28M, have been dating my girlfriend Emma, 27F, for almost a year. She's amazing, funny, smart, thoughtful, and way out of my league. The kind of girl who watches documentaries for fun but also kicks ass in Mario Kart. We met at a bookstore, talked over coffee, and things just kind of clicked. Early in the relationship, during one of those "what's your secret talent" conversations, I said I could cook. Which is true, technically. I can cook in the way that I know how not to die of starvation. I make a decent scrambled egg. I can boil pasta. Once I successfully made chile, though I forgot to drain the beans and it was more like bean soup. But I panicked and, in a tragic attempt to impress her, I said something like, "Oh yeah, I'm kind of a gourmet chef." She looked impressed. I basked in it. I figured I'd just keep things vague and maybe learn a couple of recipes off YouTube to maintain the illusion. Unfortunately, Emma took it seriously. She'd ask questions about techniques and ingredients, and I'd use what I now call confident ignorance, throwing around words like umami and sous vide without really knowing what they meant. I even downloaded a cooking terms glossary to sound legit. Fast forward to this summer, Emma invites me to her family reunion at her grandparents' lake house. This is apparently a huge thing for her extended family. Over 40 people show up, cousins, aunts, uncles, great-grandparents. It's like the Avengers of family gatherings. 2 weeks before the reunion, Emma drops a bombshell. Her family usually hires a local catering company, but this year they decided to do something more personal. She told them her boyfriend, me, was a talented chef and would love to cook for everyone. My soul left my body. I tried to get out of it. I really did. I said I wasn't sure I could handle cooking for that many people. But she gave me this proud, glowing look and said, "I told them you'd say that. But don't worry, they'll pay for all the ingredients, and you can just do your thing." Reader, I did not have a thing. I had 2 weeks to prepare. I considered confessing, but I imagined her disappointment, her entire family thinking I was a fraud, and possibly being chased into the lake with torches and pitchforks. So instead, I spent those 2 weeks going through a crash course in large-scale cooking like I was training for the Olympics. I lived on YouTube. I practiced recipes at 3 a.m. My kitchen looked like Gordon Ramsay had a mental breakdown in it. I bought a chef's coat from Amazon because somehow that felt like it would help. I decided on a simple but impressive-sounding menu: garlic herb roasted chicken, baked ziti, Caesar salad, garlic bread, and a chocolate lava cake for dessert. The plan was to prep as much as possible ahead of time, then finish everything at the lake house kitchen. Cut to the day of the reunion. I show up with 3 massive coolers, 2 bags of cooking supplies, and the crushing weight of my own lies. The kitchen was surprisingly decent, but I immediately realized I'd underestimated just how insane cooking for 40 people is. Emma's relatives kept poking their heads in to see the chef at work, offering wine, chatting, asking about my inspirations. I bullshitted like my life depended on it. At one point, someone asked if I trained in Paris. I said no, I was more of a rustic autodidact. Which is nonsense, but they all nodded appreciatively. Everything that could go wrong did. The garlic bread burned. I miscalculated the cook time for the ziti and had to blast it in the oven at full heat, nearly turning it into pasta brick. The Caesar salad dressing curdled, don't ask me how, and I ended up dumping bottled dressing into a bowl and pretending it was homemade. The chicken was the worst part. I thought I could roast 10 whole chickens in 2 batches. I didn't account for uneven oven temps or the fact that some of the birds were slightly frozen in the middle. Halfway through serving, I realized several pieces were pink inside. Cue chaos. Aunt Marlene bit into a drumstick and loudly declared, "This tastes underdone." Emma shot me a concerned look. I tried to laugh it off and offered her a slice of ziti instead. But the damage was done. People started poking at their food more cautiously. A few asked if we had any peanut butter and jelly. One guy made a sandwich out of hamburger buns and salad croutons. Emma's younger cousin, who's like 11 and brutally honest, said, "I thought you were a chef. Why is the chicken still bleeding?" I excused myself to the bathroom and had what can only be described as a 5-minute shame spiral. I looked at myself in the mirror, sweat-soaked, sauce-stained, reeking of garlic and fear. I considered fake stomach flu. Or just walking into the lake. When I came out, Emma pulled me aside and asked if I was okay. I cracked. I confessed everything, the fake chef claim, the weeks of panic learning, the disastrous prep. She didn't say anything for a long moment. Then she did the worst thing imaginable, she started laughing. Not cruelly, not mockingly. Just laughing. Apparently, she'd suspected something was up for a while. The way I always forgot to cook when we planned to make meals together, or how I reacted like a vampire to sunlight when she suggested brunch at my place. But she never expected it to blow up like this. She admitted she was upset at first, but now that it was all out, it was kind of hilarious. In a what were you thinking kind of way. Her family ended up ordering pizza. Lots of it. I sat on the deck with Emma, eating pepperoni slices and watching my dignity float across the lake like a forgotten pool noodle. Since then, I've actually started taking real cooking classes. Emma signed us up for a couples class as a joke, but it's kind of grown on me. I can now make chicken that doesn't require a tetanus shot. But yeah, moral of the story, don't lie about being a gourmet chef. Especially not to impress a girl. Especially not when that lie can snowball into poisoning 40 people at a lakeside family reunion. TIFU by trying to surprise my girlfriend with a romantic gesture and accidentally traumatizing her instead. This happened about 2 weeks ago and I'm still dealing with the fallout. I, 28M, have been dating my girlfriend Emily, 26F, for a little over a year. She's amazing, smart, funny, empathetic, and we've recently started talking about moving in together. I wanted to do something special for her, something romantic and unexpected to show how much I care. Emily's a big fan of true crime. She listens to every podcast, watches all the documentaries, and reads the books. She's also really into escape rooms, puzzles, and anything mystery-related. So I got the brilliant idea to create a kind of romantic scavenger hunt for her around her apartment that would end in a surprise dinner and me asking her to move in with me. It sounded amazing in my head. A custom-made puzzle experience combining mystery and romance. What could go wrong? The plan was this: I'd get a copy of her apartment key, which I already had because I sometimes walk her dog, go in while she was at work, and set everything up. I bought a set of little lockboxes, some fake clues, a few UV pens, and a blacklight flashlight. I even made a faux crime board with red string, photos of places we've been together, little notes, and evidence that would slowly lead her to the big reveal, a romantic candlelit dinner on her balcony and a card asking her to move in with me. The day comes, I sneak in, set everything up. I'm proud of the work I did. It looked like something out of an HBO miniseries. It started with a confession letter I wrote that sounded ominous but was supposed to be sweet in hindsight. Then she'd find a hidden key, use it to open a lockbox under her couch, get a blacklight clue, find the next hint, and so on. I even prepped the dinner and had everything ready to pop in the oven the moment she got close to the end. Then I left and waited down the block to return once I got her text saying she found everything. But I never got that text. Instead, about 20 minutes after I know she got home, I get a call from an unknown number. I answer, and it's a police officer. My heart dropped. Apparently, Emily walked in, saw the weird confession letter on the table, and freaked out. It didn't help that I'd deliberately written it in a way that made it sound vaguely criminal, as part of the experience. Then she saw the red string murder board, the UV messages on the wall, and the lockboxes hidden around her apartment. She panicked, thought someone had broken in and was stalking her, and called the cops. To make it worse, I'd forgotten to disarm one of the motion sensors connected to her smart home system. So after she called the police and was waiting outside the building, it tripped and made it look like someone was still inside. The cops arrived in full force, thinking there was an active situation. I showed up just in time to see them storming her apartment. I immediately told them I was the one who set it up, tried to explain everything, but they obviously had to take it seriously. They detained me, not arrested, thankfully, questioned me, and had to verify my identity and story. Emily was beside herself, somewhere between furious and on the verge of a breakdown. The poor girl thought she was in the middle of a real crime thriller gone wrong. After a lot of apologizing, explaining, and awkward tension, they finally let me go. The cops were not amused, but technically I hadn't broken any laws. Emily, however, didn't speak to me for 3 days. I get it. My romantic mystery came off as psychotic to someone who wasn't in on the plan. She told me later that she legitimately thought she was being targeted by someone who had been watching her for weeks. My use of personal details and the clues that were supposed to be sweet, the place we kissed after your first big work presentation, the scent you wore on our 3rd date, just made it worse. She thought whoever wrote it had been spying on her. The worst part? She said it reminded her of this real crime case she'd read about where a guy left similar notes for his victim. So she was convinced someone was going to abduct her or worse. We eventually talked it through, and I can laugh about some of it now, but there's still tension. She's not angry anymore, just unsettled. I burned a lot of trust with that one. And the kicker? I never even got to ask her to move in with me. The card was inside a final lockbox she never opened. It was impounded as part of the police investigation and I only got it back a few days ago. It's still sealed because I honestly don't know if it's the right time anymore. So yeah. I tried to combine her love of mystery and true crime with romance, and instead, I recreated her worst nightmare and nearly got myself arrested. Lesson learned, just stick to flowers and a nice dinner. TIFU by accidentally submitting a private diary entry as a group project and destroying my college social life. This happened a couple of weeks ago, and I'm still waking up in a cold sweat about it. I'm a second-year college student, majoring in psychology, and part of our grade comes from group projects where we work together on writing reflective journals about class-related topics. Pretty standard, right? Well, I've always had this habit of journaling my thoughts at the end of each day. Not for class, just for myself. I'm talking deep, unfiltered inner thoughts. Like the kind where you analyze the micro-expressions of the person who made eye contact for 0.3 seconds too long and spiral about whether they want to kill you or date you. It's like therapy, except cheaper and 100% more unhinged. Now, our Psych 203 class had a group assignment where we had to submit a shared Google Doc journal reflecting on our collaborative process and personal development. Everyone in the group was responsible for writing their own section weekly, and we had to compile it into one document to submit. I was in a group of 4, including me, and we'd been vibing pretty well. You know, polite, semi-funny group chat banter, and occasional Zoom calls where someone's cat steals the show. On the night before the assignment was due, I was beyond fried. I had back-to-back midterms, hadn't slept in 36 hours, and was running on cold coffee and panic. I sat down to add my final reflection to our shared doc, but I had also been working on my personal journal entry in a separate Word document. You can probably see where this is going. I finished writing what I thought was a pretty raw, introspective piece about the meaning of vulnerability, my struggle with imposter syndrome, and some harmless commentary on how I perceived each group member. I wasn't being malicious. More like stream of consciousness musing. For example, James seems like he has it all together, but I get the sense he's overcompensating. That tight smile screams suppressed childhood trauma. Nina is sweet, but God, if she says circle back one more time I might walk into traffic. Does she think she's in a corporate boardroom? Travis is definitely hot. Objectively hot. But in a golden retriever kind of way. If he ever read this, I'd die. Yeah. I don't know how, but in my exhaustion and multiple open windows, I copied the wrong file into the shared Google document. Instead of pasting my neat, academically appropriate paragraph, I slapped my entire chaotic 1,500-word diary entry, complete with full thoughts, unfiltered tangents, and way too much psychological analysis of my classmates, right into the collaborative document. And then I hit save. And then I closed my laptop. And then I passed out for 10 glorious hours. When I woke up, I was feeling oddly light. Rested. Peaceful. I even made breakfast, which should have been a red flag right there. It wasn't until around 11 a.m. that I noticed my phone had 27 missed notifications from our group chat. Travis, hey OP, what is this? Nina, I'm confused, was this meant to be in the final doc? James, this has to be a mistake, right? Then a screenshot. Then another. Then a full copy-paste of the part where I said Nina's voice made me want to hurl myself into oncoming traffic. Panic set in so fast I nearly dropped my phone into my cereal. I scrambled to my laptop, yanked it open like it owed me money, and opened the document. There it was. In all its glory. The entire unhinged diary entry, sitting at the end of the paper, clearly labeled under my name, with no formatting and zero attempt at professionalism. I died a little. Actually, no, I transcended. I astral projected into another dimension where I no longer existed. Worst part? The doc had already been submitted. Our TA had read it. Probably laughed. Possibly cried. Maybe even reported me to the psych department. I tried damage control. First, I messaged the group, "Oh my god. That was not supposed to be in there. I am so sorry. I was sleep deprived and pasted the wrong file. I swear I'm not insane." James just replied with a thumbs up emoji. Nina left me on read. Travis, bless his golden retriever soul, said it's okay, lol. Kinda flattering? But damn. The silence after that was loud. We ended up getting a 72 on the assignment. The TA left a vague comment, unique perspective from one group member. Consider keeping reflections relevant and respectful in future submissions. I think that was generous. Since then, things have shifted. Nina avoids me in class. James nods curtly if we make eye contact. Travis winked at me once and now I don't know if I should drop out or propose marriage. The group dynamic is officially dead, and I've been reborn as that person who psychoanalyzed their peers and turned it in. I've learned a few things from this experience. 1. Never journal on the same device you use for assignments. 2. Proofread. Then proofread again. Then maybe set your computer on fire just to be safe. 3. Golden retriever types are terrifying when they know you find them attractive. Anyway, my professor wants to meet with me next week to discuss boundaries in reflective writing. I may not survive that meeting. If you don't hear from me again, I've changed my name and am living in the woods somewhere, far away from Google Docs and hot classmates. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos. Also, leave a comment, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.